Hey family, thanks for tuning in. I'm Ant, this is BT. The purpose of our show is to give a black perspective towards controversial and uncomfortable subjects. Unapologetic is a safe space for us and our viewers to embrace those difficult conversations. With that being said, BT, how you feeling, man?
My bad. I know it's been a minute, but happy to get back and talk about some important topics. This year's been a crazy year for us, and probably got a chance to kick the podcast off and continue to go. So every episode's a blessing, and just ready to have some more discussions.
Most definitely. So this week our topic of discussion is going to be regarding mental health. I think that's something very important that BT and I both want to address because of just everything that's been going on. It's a whirlwind of a year, as everyone knows. We've all been impacted differently. So we want to get in tune with that subject to hopefully shed some light, bring some ease, some comfort, and different thoughts and ideas to help people out with any mental health issues. So going off that, I want to start with, how do you feel we are as a whole in society regarding mental health right now currently?
Yeah, so I believe that it's gotten a lot better than what it used to be. Years and years ago, it was always, especially when it comes to men, it's always the brawn thing to just stick your shoulders out, provide for the family, and bear the weight of everything that's thrown at you, and tough through it, right? And suppress those feelings that that you can't control or that you don't know how it comes, right? And from a women's perspective, right, there used to be this society notion that you're supposed to be the backbone, you're supposed to be the support system for the male, and things of that nature, right? All these old nostalgic,
right.
Thought processes that are not really a thing anymore, right? But nowadays, there's more, I would more or less say, a movement where acknowledging it, and mental health awareness is really good. I think our society now, and specifically in the U.S., is doing a better job of just acknowledging in general the fact that it is a thing, people are battling with it, and it happens and it comes in all shapes, types, and forms, right? There is no uniform answer or issue to why somebody would be suffering from a mental health perspective. And there's multiple solutions on how to get there, right? But that's all divulged by you and whoever you seek as a source to help you get through that, right? Back in the day, those were not talked about. They were things, but even from an education perspective, there's a lot more people going to school to learn about the psychology and psychology behind it, and wanting to go into those fields where they can help people from a mental health awareness and a mental health standpoint. So I do think we do a lot better of it, but I do think one area of improvement is solutioning. We don't talk enough about the solutions that we can't provide to people, and the solutions that are available in general, right? Now, necessarily, we're humans and we all have our days, right? But there needs to be somewhere where you can use it as an outlet to go. And I feel like a lot of times the reason why people struggle is because they don't know where to go for an outlet, or they don't feel comfortable with the options they have as an outlet. So us being able to provide a better solution to it would benefit our society moving forward. But that's something that I feel like we could do a lot better job of. What do you feel?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but believe it or not, I actually disagree with you on this one. I think prior to this year, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly as far as the improvement and where we're at in society. But I think 2020 has been a year of beginnings and not all positive regards. I mean, from obviously the COVID-19, which has ravaged families, friends, and loved ones, to the reawakening of social justice initiatives, to the loss of jobs, so on and so forth. I think there's been so many negative things in addition to losing some people's idols. There's been a lot of prominent figures that have been lost this year that no one just saw coming, because you just never see that type of thing coming. And I think it took a heavy toll on people to where it's been so much all at once, just back to back to back. It feels like you just can't breathe. You can't come up for air. It's like, all right, it's one thing after another. I think people's mental health has been challenged in a way that has never been challenged before, and therefore, to your point, there hasn't been any solution out there prior to this. So now with all of this happening at the same time, just piling on top, I think there are a lot of people out there that are drowning mentally. and they don't know how to handle it. And it doesn't help the fact that everyone is being told to stay indoors if you can, for the most part.
Right,
So
right.
is now, how do you handle that? It's all just you looking yourself in the mirror and just stuck with your thoughts on everything that's going on and how you're being affected directly and indirectly. So I think it's taken a heavy toll on society as a whole, and I think we as a whole in society are really struggling when it comes to mental health, just because it's just so much at once, and just everything seems, it just feels unprecedented this year, everything that people have dealt with. So I don't think people are doing the greatest right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I don't think people are doing the greatest. For myself, I can speak to that. This year has been more struggling and challenging than any other that I've had in recent years. But I do think the one thing that has helped me is the diagnosis of mental health awareness prior to this, or prior to this year. Having discussions about not only like acknowledging the fact that you're in a bad mental space, but having the ability to say, here are some positive things that you can do to, to get yourself out of that space, or to make sure that you don't get to that space. So like self-care, reading books, yoga, stuff like that. I never thought about anything like that until the past couple of years when that movement more or less started becoming prevalent. So now we're definitely facing more negative mental health facets than we ever have in the past. So I definitely agree with you on that sense that we're not doing better, but I think it would have been a lot worse if we didn't have that movement beforehand to spread awareness about your states, before you got bogged down by the monster that we all call 2020. So, but yeah, I do want to get a little bit more segmented down into Black mental health specifically, right? Because I know that's such a taboo topic to talk about in the community in specific. So, do you believe that mental health in the Black culture is intentionally suppressed?
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I would say I don't think it's suppressed. I don't think it's intentionally suppressed, right? I do think it is suppressed, but I don't think it's intentional.
Okay.
I think there's a multitude of things that affects Black mental health, such as one being just being aware of what's going on. I do think there's been an increase in education, but I don't think that always trickled down to, for example, people that are below that poverty line, that are right there on the brink. They don't have, one thing is access to the information as far as what you may be going through, and that it's not just you going through this, like other people are going through this, and this is what you may have an issue with, and this is how you resolve it.
Right.
There's a lack of information, a lack of access to actual seeing like therapists, doctors, and things along those lines, of people that can help you work through these things instead of just your everyday person that may be going through the same thing as you, because they're in poverty as well,
Right.
or just in a bad situation to where they don't have access to other resources to help them through this. So I think access is a huge thing. Another thing is, I would say, is Black people some Black people don't have insurance. Insurance covers a lot of those type of things as far as when it comes to getting some form of mental health expert to be able to help walk you through these things that you're dealing with right now, because those people are very expensive to get in front of. It's not like you could just show up to a free clinic for that type of thing. Unfortunately, like, you have to pay, and typically your insurance will pay a chunk of that, which helps out for you to be able to get there, to be able to address whatever that issue is. So, and also I think that there's a negative stigma to it as well. In the Black community, if you have a mental issue, a lot of times you look down upon, or there's a perception of you being weak, and you feel vulnerable. If you feel weak, you feel vulnerable, and you feel like that there's a chance that someone will attack you either mentally or physically, perhaps sometimes. So there are myriad things I think that ties into it that leads to the Black mental health being where it is right now, which is not ideal. And I don't think it's intentional, like, hey, this is what we want. It's more, this is what the cards were dealt, and we have to play with the cards that were dealt in order to survive, because mental health isn't the only thing that's on their plate. There's a myriad of other things that they have to deal with day in and day out.
I hear you on that. I wouldn't necessarily say I disagree with the fact that it's intentionally suppressed. And I don't know if that was the right word I should have used, but I do think that it's bred from the homes of Black culture. Now, growing up, me specifically, I was told, we're going to face hardships, we're going to face adversity, the cards are stacked against us, you need to toughen up, suck it up, and fight through it. We're not going to let them make us an example, we're not going to let them fight, beat us down. You're going to, face harder paths than some of your peers because of the color of their skin, things of that nature, right? And through none of that, the the speech or the talk that we have when we're brought up as kids. None of that ever acknowledges, really, at least in my home, that it's okay to be beaten up, to feel down, to go through ruts. That it's going to, it's going to be a challenge, but just pick up your bootstraps and keep going. That doesn't provide us with the outlet or the opportunity to acknowledge that, hey, like, I'm feeling rough, I'm feeling, in a bad spot right now. You think back to that initial conversation that your parents had, and you're like, well, crap, I can't let them see me weak.
Right.
Like you said, I can't let them see me looking like I'm in a struggling or a down place or anything like that, right? And I know myself when I was going through, roughly 2-3 year stretch where I was going through that, I felt like I couldn't go to my parents because, one, I felt like they wouldn't understand because, like you said, or like I said before, it's bred, and I wouldn't say intentionally, but it's bred from our culture, and that's passed down from generation to generation to generations. They've never heard of that, and from my grandparents, and they've been through way worse than I have, right? But they've never heard of being in a bad mental space or not controlling how you're feeling at that time. They don't acknowledge it. So for me to come out to my parents and just say, hey, I'm not in a good space. Things are clouded in my head, things of that nature, right? It would catch them so off guard that I would feel alienated, right. and that's why I never came to them about it, right? I spoke with my sister, obviously, but that's the newer generation.
Right.
She understood. She has conversations with her friends because naturally women are more in touch with their mental health than men are because we feel like we need to bear the weight of the world on our shoulders, and we don't. So the intentional might not have been the word, but I do think that it's something that's been bred in our culture for years and years and years, coming from slave days where, hey, you're in a crappy situation,
right?
But we're going to get it through, right? And it's going to be hard, but don't just shake it off, So that's just my thought on it.
No, I feel that. Going off that, though, to try to piggyback off that situation, why do you think that there's a lack of clinical treatment for Black people when it comes to having poor mental health in general? Like, why aren't we able to seek out these therapists and so on and so forth to be able to get it taken care of?
Oh, man. So I think there's two components to it. Like I just mentioned, I think it's just from a stance of embarrassment in the Black community specifically. You don't want to be seen in that light, and it's scary to take that step because you're making yourself more vulnerable than you ever have been in your life. And vulnerability is not something that Black people are kin to in general. They not very often would put themselves out there to be assessed, risk evaluated, anything like that, or even dissected or analyzed. But now more than ever, it's become prevalent that, hey, sometimes you can't win those battles by yourself, or it's going to be extremely difficult. You're going to put yourself in a further hole that you don't. So I think that it's like that culture is part of the reason why we don't get access to it, and we don't. That's a personal thing. We don't want to take that step ourselves. Secondly, and that's for some people, right? But for a grand majority of it, I will say, is from a socioeconomic position, the access, the resources, the ability to go down the street or just Google someone near you that's a mental health facility or clinic that has a top-notch professional in there, a social worker, anything like that, right? A lot of times in impoverished or low-income areas, they're geared towards the kids. Inside of schools, things of that nature, for troubled teens. Now, they don't necessarily not be troubled, but they get thrown to a social worker, and they're just labeled as a bad kid or struggling at home and stuff like that. Instead of just analyzing the reality of what it is that they could be battling some mental health issues from the outside perspective, right? But that access is just not there. I can't probably blocks and blocks and blocks of mental health clinics, even doctor's offices and therapists and things of that nature. Where do you think most of those are usually based? Where are those professions that are going to college to get those degrees to create opportunity for themselves to meet with, average citizens, everyday citizens? They're placing their businesses in the suburbs. They're not going out and starting these foundations and stuff in the hood or in low poverty or income areas. So they just don't really have access to it. Which I know you touched on before. I'm sure you want to elaborate on that, though.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great points. So I'm not going to regurgitate them, but 2 points that I don't think that you touched on is one, Financially, I think finances are a huge thing. You can know where one is located as far as a site to be able to get some assistance, but knowing where it's at and being able to afford to actually utilize the services are two completely different things. So the pricing that this stuff is at the rate that they're at right now compared to those who, like I said earlier, don't have insurance, and typically if they're not in poverty, it can be median to low income. It's just not affordable within what you can afford and just as far as your day in and day out needs and wants as far as what it requires to maintain your lifestyle, because it is very expensive. So I think finances are a huge aspect to it and something that needs to be addressed for those who, for example, does not have insurance, which typically a lot of black people don't, that are in those realms. Secondly, I think it kind of ties into one of your points as far as how it's cultivated within a household. You're typically taught to deal with that stuff on the inside, and that typically leads to finding your own personal coping mechanisms. And that can vary. That can vary from drugs to developing very bad excessive habits, such as it can be something as simple as eating or something as grand as excessive drinking. That there's just a myriad of things that can start to develop as far as these habits and things to try to block out what you're dealing with.
Right.
So that way you don't even have to seek out those clinical treatments because you don't want to be seen as that, or you just simply can't afford it. So you find your own way to treat yourself theoretically to bypass any of the other ways of being able to figure this thing out.
Yep. I know a lot of people that turn to the bottle.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate as well because as a society we've opened our arms to drinking, and obviously, I drink and a lot of my peers drink as well, but in the recreational sense, right? But then all you see all day long and all over the media is that, and those people that don't have those outlets or resources, they see this is a way to wash away my problems or forget that I'm thinking about anything, go out, have fun, and just drop everything, right? So I definitely agree with you on that point of view. So in the overall mental health scope then, since we touched on black mental health for sure, what do you think needs to be done to further the conversation about mental health awareness and mental health solutioning?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most important question that we've had, because everyone can identify the problem. That's typically the easiest part. It's the solution. It's the hard part to not only find but then implement. But going off that, I think some solutions can be one, having these type of conversations, because this is a taboo subject, especially within the black home, black community, to have these type of conversations, to even say the word like mental health or mental illness. It's a taboo thing to even say. So having those conversations and normalizing it, which is a huge thing, not just a one-off, but normalizing that the subject, it exists, it's prevalent, and it's okay. It doesn't make you less than. It makes you unique, which we're already unique from the jump. We're all made differently, which makes us all unique. So whatever you may have, whatever you may be battling with mentally, health-wise, it's okay. It doesn't make you less than. So I think normalizing it is a huge thing. And two, I think that we need to start being advocates for each other as far as being that support system. So you may be fine as far as what you feel you are in the mental state, but guess what? Your peer may not be fine, or your best friend, or even your parents, your grandparents. You don't know. So just having those simple check-ins. Hey, how are you doing? And make it more than just that surface level, hey, how are you doing? Actually mean it when you say it, and ask some follow-up questions about how they're feeling, how they're living, what they have going on in society, how's everything with the pandemic, whatever is making them feel. Ask those type of candid questions if you truly care about a person, whether it be a close friend, family friend, loved one. Ask those transparent questions and make them feel comfortable to be vulnerable. Because if they don't feel comfortable, if they feel like you're just asking that simple, just, hey, how's it going? They're not going to give you how it's really going. Ask them follow-up questions. Be an advocate to be a part of that solution for others, and especially if you want to receive that same thing in return. Because, you helping that person now can be them transferring, and now they're helping you out. Now you're starting to voice how you're feeling and things and so on from that forward.
Yep, and I know, speaking to the last point you just touched on, that happens a lot, right? But it also happens on the flip, where you give your all to everybody around you and you want to be that supportive person and you want to make sure that they know they have someone to lean to or turn to, but then you use all your energy draining yourself doing that, and you don't acknowledge or recognize that the problems that you have going on because you're spending your time voicing that they're not giving back to you, right? And I think the biggest thing that you touched on is normalizing it. Once you normalize it, it becomes a we're all in this together, right? I think it needs to become a more common thing that's talked about as the movement now with Black Lives Matter. It's okay to be black. It's okay to have differences between people. The same thing needs to be done on the national scale about mental health. It's okay to have those problems. It's okay to have those issues. And I don't even want to call it a problem because it's just a rut, and everybody will get through it. You just have to know where to, properly allocate your resources, and do what you can, and take baby steps. I think people think that mental health is something that's going to be cured in a day. Like
right.
It's not an illness.
Right.
There is an actual thing that it chemically imbalances your brain, but baby steps. You're not going to wake up one day and be like, I'm cured of depression, right? Or you're not going to wake up and all your problems are going to be washed away. I'm sure there's 40 more that's going to be waiting to come in that door. But if you normalize it and you attack it the proper way, in a formulated way, in a strategic way, I think that that'll do a lot of good benefit for us.
Totally agree.
So, wanted to touch on, that was our episode actually, wanted to touch on Small Business of the Month and the Charity of the Month. Have not spoke about it in a little bit since we've been away, but I Desire, great business. We just want to make sure that we got everybody's eyes on that. Eyewear and eyelashes, they do great work. So go check that out. Link is in the bio as well. The People's Coalition of Aurora, that is our Charity of the Month. We're trying to make sure that everybody gets their eyes on that. Donate if you can. They are supportive of the jail bond fund that helps people in low-income areas that are getting locked up and can't get out for petty and minor crimes.
Most definitely. Shout out to both of those once again. They're both amazing things that are given back to the community in their respective ways. So we appreciate both of those respective businesses and programs for what they're doing. Going off of that, though, we're going to transition into our challenge of the week. And this one is going to be slightly different than normally, because normally I have you go out and try to talk to someone and figure it out. But with the pandemic going on, stuff like that, I know a lot of people want to be safe rather than sorry, and they want to stay in. So this week's challenge is for those that are struggling with mental health issues. Here's some quick steps to help you through that. So first, tell yourself something positive. So, because research shows that, the more you say something positive, the more powerful effect that it has on you as a person. Find something positive and repeatedly every day tell yourself something positive. Going from that, second, write down something that you're grateful for. Try to make it something that's in the moment so that you can reference it. But when you write down something that you're grateful for, at that point, like, hey, I have this to look forward to. I have this to stick around for. And then third, I say exercise. I know it's hard now because of the pandemic, but I've seen a lot of people get creative, including myself. Sometimes you got to move the couches around and do some push-ups or find some type of stretch bands or something.
Man, don't even get me started on exercise.
Whatever works for you, but something. You need to get yourself loose and just free your mind from something.
Yep.
But other than that, we do have some additional resources for you to access, so just check the website in our bio if you're looking for some more resources to help you out with your mental health.
Yes, sir.
But aside from all of that, as always, thank you for tuning in. We definitely appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Spread love. It's contagious. God bless.